you. So
How are
happy
you
to
doing?
be here. Doing really
Yes.
good. It's been a busy day. Kind of cold
Yeah.
where I am, but we're doing good.
Good, good. Yes, happy St. Patrick's Day.
I know.
My
Happy St.
goodness.
Patrick's Day. I honestly didn't realize it until I saw everyone wearing green, and I was like, "Ah, it's today."
Exactly. I had to
Very
represent
festive.
today. So, oh, all right, there we go. Good. So let's get settled in. Let's chit chat for a couple minutes. Hopefully, a few people will log on. Then we can get into the meat and potatoes of it, the
Sounds
corned
great.
beef and the potatoes of it. Um, so yeah, so I have everything here, and I think I'm all set. The only thing I forgot to do is print out questions, but I'm pretty sure I have everything that I know I up in here.
Sounds good. I
Um,
think I have some people's questions too that people DM'd me. I'm gonna try to pull up
Perfect.
and see if I can find them.
Good. So we'll do that. Yeah. So we'll wait a few minutes and this video will save for replay. So if anybody's watching this later, if you're replaying it, I will have things time stamped in the video description. So you can just skip ahead till we get into the real conversation. Oh, good. We have some people logging in. That's awesome. I love it.
Yay!
Okay. And yeah, so let me do live chat. I have the live chat on. I don't see anything yet, but it should show up when we get questions. Good. All right. So yeah, so Jacob, you've been making the rounds on all the YouTube channels lately.
I
I love
have been.
it.
I know I've been a very social butterfly.
You have. This is your second video in what? 2 weeks?
Yeah, something like that. I
The
don't
last one
remember.
was
All the
2 weeks
days are
ago.
meshing together.
Yeah, so for anyone who missed it, Jacob was on fellow creator Jen's channel. What is it? Sunshine Fashion Love.
Yes.
So I will again have that linked in the video description, once the live is over. So if you want to see more of Jacob, you can head over to Jen's channel. And the chat over on Jen's channel, that was a little bit different. You guys were more talking about all the drama and everything that's going
Yeah.
on for creators on
Yes.
Instagram, which is another super interesting topic about what's been going on lately. I
Honestly,
know.
I didn't realize how impactful it was until we started talking about it. And then other people have been messaging me saying, "Hey, I saw your video. I've been doing the same thing." So I think it's crazy what's going on, but
I
you
know.
know, roll with the punches.
Exactly. I know. And like, fingers crossed, knock on wood. I haven't had any issues yet, but I feel like it's just a matter of time, everybody's
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
affected.
You never know when it's gonna strike.
Somehow.
So.
And whether it's on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, people are having problems on TikTok. So
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know, the nature of the beast. I think technology is it's always moved way too fast
Mhm.
than like people can keep up. So anyway, if you have no idea what we're talking about, I will have that video linked and you can go check it out later. Jen Sunshine Fashion Love over on her channel. So good. We have people on. Thank you guys so much for joining. My first ever live stream on this channel. I was a little bit nervous, but I'm so happy to have my friend here, Jacob, who you probably know better as Je veux le sac. I'm trying my best French pronunciation.
You're good.
Everyone always like criticizes me for my French in my video comments, but what do
You
you
know, at
expect? I'm
least you're
American.
trying. You're trying, so that's all that counts.
Thank you. Which in French means
I want the bag, but
yes.
it's not proper French. I want to note that a lot of French people will message me and be like, "That's not how you really say it," and I'm like, "Yeah, I know."
Wait, so
But
how do you really say it?
so, like in French, you wouldn't really say you would say like "je le veux," which means I want it.
Oh,
Yeah, so you wouldn't
yes.
necessarily say like "I want the bag,"
Yeah,
but you know, it's just part of the fun, and I love it.
exactly.
but yeah.
Good. So, yes, so Jacob from Je veux le sac. And if you don't follow Jacob, again, I'll have everything linked. But actually, I think I might have already put the link in the in the description for the live stream.
Hmm.
So over on Instagram, and that's your main platform,
Yes.
you do mostly handbag care, advice, tutorials, tips, how to take care of these things we spend way too much money on.
Yes.
And because, right, that's part of luxury. And that's the
Yes.
quote, I think, from someone at Hermes said that's true luxury is something that you can just keep repairing and using
Hmm.
for many
I would
years to
100%
come.
agree with that. Yep.
Yep. So we're going to talk well, we're going to do handbag care second. I want to start off the conversation talking about vintage handbags. And I have a couple of my older bags here. So that's a lot of what you do on your channel, or excuse me, your page.
Hmm.
Vintage bags, rehabbing, repairing,
Yes.
restoring bags. So how did you start your page? When did you start? How did it start, and how has it sort of changed over time?
Yeah, so it's kind of the origin story, I like to call it, is kind of a funny story. So I first got into luxury, 2018, I think.
Okay.
That's when the hype really start for pre-loved luxury really started to take off.
Mhm.
And I've always been interested in luxury, but I never, it was one of those facades where I feel like for a lot of people as well, where that's just expensive. I would never spend that much money on that. But then the
Mhm.
more I fell in love with the history of fashion and like how these bags are made and the different aspects of how they're like how the history kind of aligns in everything, how fashion is really.
Yeah.
And then going to YouTube, seeing other
Mhm.
creators be able to buy pre-loved for an affordable price, and then I kind of started testing the waters, buying kind of, I guess you call them junk bags for pretty
Mhm.
cheap, fixing them up, and then that's really how my passion started. I just fell in love with the process of
Mhm.
buying something that necessarily someone would not consider luxury and turning
Mhm.
into something that is
Yeah.
luxurious. So then in 2020, 2021, I think it was, I had to, it's been what, over 2 years now.
It's been a
Um,
minute.
yeah, it has been a minute. I think, like a lot of other creators in our community, during the height of the pandemic, where we had a lot of extra time, and kind of sitting at home in your house, thinking, "Oh, what can I do to like kind of
Mhm.
keep my hobbies going?" I started an Instagram page where I met a ton of people that were also into pre-loved luxury, vintage bags,
Mhm.
luxury in general, and I just started posting my bags, and then I one day I posted a video on how to condition vachetta, and that's when it
Mhm.
exploded. And that's when I truly found, it's like, wow,
Yeah.
there's a little niche for this. Of there's a lot of
Mhm.
people out there that really have no idea what handbag care is. And for me,
Mhm.
I've always been a nerd about it. So I've done so much research over the years, and that's kind of
Yeah.
how it grew. Is I just kept going and going and learning more and more. But yeah,
Mhm.
so that's kind of how my page
Yeah.
started.
Awesome. And it's so funny too because I feel like as you're talking through your whole story, I can relate to so much of it. I'm like, yeah, I started around 2019 was when I bought my first bag, as it was this Neverfull, which is actually my next question for you. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit. But it was the same thing. Like I had always loved fashion and luxury throughout like high school and college. I collected Vogue magazines. I would like read Vogue every single month. I had a whole bookshelf at my parents' house. It was just like rows of magazines. I wish I had kept those now, thinking back at it. But when I moved out, I was like, I'm not moving into
Yeah.
this tiny little apartment and bringing all these magazines with me. But it never really occurred to me that, I mean, at that time, so it was like 20 years ago, that it was something for me. It was just looking at these beautiful pictures of these really expensive items that celebrities wore because we like social media was like in its very, very, very little infancy back then. Like, I wouldn't go online and see people like me wearing that stuff. Like it wasn't quite as widespread and normalized as it is today. So it just never really occurred to me. And then I saw someone I knew actually in my husband's family, one of his cousins, she had a Neverfull, and I was like, "Oh." I was like, "Wait, she's like me." I was like, "I can buy that." And I actually bought my first bag pre-loved, just like you. I went out and went to a local consignment store. They happened to just get one in, and that was it. That was, down the rabbit hole. But,
It
it's so
truly
funny. I
is
feel like
that.
and that's so interesting because then, like, with that story about conditioning vachetta, that was the same thing with me. I'm like, "Oh, no. I have this, like, really expensive thing now." I'm like, "How do I take care of it? I don't know."
Mhm.
Like, I had never done that before, so it's so funny because I feel like so many of us, like, can all relate to, like, the similar journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so what was mentioning your first bag, what was your first bag that you bought? And I just mentioned mine was, which I feel like it's kind of cliche, but I mean, why not? It's a good, like, I feel like the first bags that are all like, they're cliche for a reason because they're good, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but
Mine
yeah, I
mine
bought
was
this.
a cliche too. So my first ever bag was a Speedy 30. It is
Mhm.
long gone now. I It was on the rougher side when I first bought it, and I used and abused that thing. I think I accidentally ripped the
No.
zipper off of it, and then I just was kind of like, I'm just gonna sell it and then move on to something else. But my first
Yeah.
ever like in boutique purchase was my
Uh-huh.
Speedy 25. I remember going in and
Nice.
just like I've always loved the Speedy, and I think I just something about it, just the chicness and then the history
Mhm.
behind it, just forever obsessed with it.
Mhm.
But yeah, this was my first ever LV bag. But yeah.
I love it. Oh my, I know. I've been thinking the same thing with this Neverfull. Like, I've always thought about selling it over the years. I've even got, like, periodically, like, I'll just ask for quotes too, but I can never in the end bring myself to sell it because it was my first bag and it just has, I don't know, it just has a little special place for me. And
Yeah.
yeah, like, it's hopefully this year we'll be sending it in to get the vachetta replaced because yeah, like, you can tell I mean, it's cracked, it's just
Yeah. Do it now
it
too.
needs
The
it.
repair prices have gone absolutely bonkers.
I know. Yeah, and I regret not getting it done sooner. It's the thing I've
Yeah.
always put off because of, like, it's cost quite a bit of money to get it replaced, and I've always opted to just buy another bag and buy more. And then I'm like, "Oh, well, I just spent this money. I don't want to, like, do the repair right now." So I keep putting it off and off and off. And finally this year I'm like, I need to do it because before I know it's going to cost me $1,000. And then I should have just bought it brand new.
Oh yeah.
Because the repair is so expensive.
Well, I was so shocked at the video I posted today on Instagram, my most recent repair that came back because what was it? 2 years ago I had
Yeah.
I had this Neverfull GM that I had that top binding replaced and it was $60.
Mhm.
Last year I had my Batignolles horizontal replaced, the same repair was $90. And this one was kind of like, ooh, the dagger.
Yeah.
It was like just under 200 for that simple repair. So yes, I recommend to anyone if you've ever been sitting on a bag that you want to send in, do it now because you never know
Mhm.
what it's gonna be like. But yeah,
Yep, exactly. That's actually my next purchase. Probably, like, next month, I'll reach out
yeah,
and get the ball rolling and see how much it's gonna cost. Yeah, and I that's the one thing I hate is it's so hard to figure out what the repair will be. It's so easy to go
yeah.
on and find the cost of a bag or, like, a price increase. People are always posting that. But the only place I've ever been able to find bag repair prices, unless you have any other ideas, is on the Purse Forum. They I know
Yes.
they have a thread where, you can, people can write in and say how much it costs them to get a repair done. But other than that, yeah.
I tend to go to the LV Facebook groups because usually when someone
Oh,
posts they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, my bag came back." Then
yeah.
everyone's like, "How much was it? How much was it?" And then
Exactly.
everyone else is commenting saying how much they paid for their most recent
Yeah.
ones. But yeah, it's kind of hard to find those prices. And also too, LV. What's weird about it is what's nice and weird about the process is you can replace anything down to like the littlest thing. So like say you want like just like the handles like
Mhm.
one of the chaps replaced or like the zipper pull replaced. You can do everything itemized or you can do it all together. I always like to recommend to people to do everything all together because it's cheaper.
Mm.
LV tends
Oh,
to jack up the
interesting.
prices for singular items. I don't know
Yeah.
why, but
Interesting. I
yeah.
guess maybe they have it there, so it's I
I
don't know
think
why they would be interested in saving you money, but I guess once it's there, it's less expensive to just do everything all at once.
yeah, I do know the one thing that I can kind of think of is it really comes down to how the bags are manufactured. So if
Mm.
you're going to like, for example, a Speedy, if you want to replace a lot of people think they can just like take the piece off and replace it. Like it doesn't work like that with
Mm.
construction. They actually have to take apart the whole bag to do it. So
Wow.
a lot of times that's why those simple repairs, like this piece here, they have to take apart this whole section of the bag to do it. So that's why it's
Yeah.
so expensive to do it because you have to also account for the artisan's time and pay and all that. But
Yeah, that's a great
yeah,
point. But
yeah,
speaking of vachetta leather, which is what we've been talking about with the
yes.
repairs, we just got a question in the chat from Baby Scoopsy. Thank you so much for commenting, and I always appreciate you watching on my channel a lot. They asked, do either of you treat the vachetta leather with apple guard or something similar? I have been scared to attempt it with my LV vachetta bags. So why don't I'll answer this question. I'll say what I do. And then, as our in house expert today, you can tell us what the actual correct answer is. So, I have never treated any of my vachetta leather. So actually, most of my bags with vachetta, like this, I have bought pre loved, which I
Hmm.
think is great because the vachetta already has a nice patina. It's already sort of worn in a little bit. You don't have to worry about being the first one to get a water stain on it or something. But I have bought a few bags new from the boutique with vachetta, and I have not done anything to them at all. I just wear them, I let them naturally patina over time, and that's it. I never treat them.
Yeah.
So that's
So
my answer.
yes, I this is a very controversial topic because a lot of
Mhm.
people will they automatically say do it because watermarks it is kind of like one of those things where it's not really the most pleasant thing to see in your bag. But
Yes.
I always tell people never to do it just because I have done a lot of research on leather and to really understand the patina process, it's not
Mhm.
kind of like it just turns. It's actually like a chemical reaction.
Mhm.
So the process of vachetta leather patinaing comes through the chemical reaction of the natural untreated leather being exposed to moisture in the air, sunlight, the oils in your hands. So a lot of people don't realize that the patina process is an art form.
Mhm.
So raw vachetta leather, the more you use it, the more it patinas, and it's kind of I like to describe it as like seasoning a cast iron pan.
Mhm.
So
Oh,
the
that's
more
great.
you
I love
use
that.
it, the
Mhm.
more the oils and stuff, the leather actually builds its own protection layer. So the older the bag gets, splashes of water here and there won't be as apparent as like brand new vachetta. So
Mhm.
I always like to go the natural way because I'm a LV nerd, so I love the process. But also too, a lot of those sprays people don't know that it's really bad for vachetta leather just because of um, the natural leather process and the patina process. Putting any sort of chemical on vachetta leather, it needs moisture to stay
Mhm.
dry and supple. So putting those chemicals on it makes the leather hydrophobic, so it won't be able to get the moisture that it needs. So along the road, you won't really necessarily see it maybe 10 years down the road, but as your bag starts to get to that 15, 20-year mark
Mhm.
vintage, it's going to start to excessively crack. And especially the more layers you add of the chemicals to the bag, the worse it's going to get faster. So I always
Mm.
like to tell people just don't do it. I understand if you really hate watermarks, and you just can't stand it. If you want to do that, go ahead. There's nothing wrong with that, but I personally
Mhm.
just don't recommend it. But yeah.
Yeah. So we just
I
had
know that is
another. What?
It's a very controversial topic, and I know it can get kind of feisty. I know I post some reels
Yeah.
sometimes. People get up in arms, but yeah.
I know that is one of the things I do see posted online a lot is people like getting out that apple guard and and spraying the
Yeah.
bags. And like you said, I understand the hesitation, especially when you're spending like, 1,000, 2,000 and above on a bag, especially if it's a new bag these days, over
Yeah.
$2,000. You want to keep it looking good for as long as you can. But like you said, in the long run, it'll make it crack, it'll make it age faster. And I love that what is it? Um Not an analogy, but that comparison like with a cast iron pan, like that is
Yes.
so
It's
good.
exactly
Such
how
a
the
good way to
patina
think of it.
process works. Yeah,
Yep.
and I think, really, the thing I don't like is kind of a lot of people don't know that, like, my origin story of how I started with my, like, wanting to learn about all these things is I actually destroyed an LV bag
Mm.
because I got a water stain on my vachetta. It was the end of the world for me when I was a newbie. And I saw online that, oh, if you take a magic eraser to the vachetta, it will magically remove it. Well, dummy me believes someone on the internet, and I completely destroyed my bag. So that's kind of like a
No.
thing I always recommend to people in the luxury community is knowledge is power. If you don't know something, research it because there's a ton of
Mhm.
information on the internet, good and bad. So before
Yeah.
you make a decision, I always recommend people to reach out to an expert or do your own research because
Mhm.
when you're spending this amount of money on a bag, you want to do it the right way, you know?
Exactly. And I love that you were saying that because some people may not know, by day, I am actually a librarian. So, research and like knowing your sources is so important. People on the internet can say literally everything. Someone
Hmm.
on the internet is not a credible source. So, like you said, go to someone who actually does like handbag repair who's experienced in it, even if it's not
Hmm.
necessarily a professional, like you don't repair bags professionally, like it's not your job, but you have years of experience of actually doing it and doing
Hmm.
tutorials and showing before and afters of repairs and maintenance that you've done, or reach out to a business who does this, not
Yes.
just some random person online because yeah, it's anybody can say anything.
Yeah, and I to mention that too is also like there's a lot of leather experts that some of my videos people don't agree with. And I think that's the
Mhm.
nice thing about the internet is you have all this access to different opinions and different methods. But a lot of my information that I've gathered over the years is directly researching like since I'm such a nerd on vintage Louis Vuitton, is
Mhm.
researching how the patina process works, how these brands source natural vachetta leather, how it's
Mhm.
manufactured, all that. So that's kind of how I have a basis of my experience with leather and the types of products to use for different things.
Yeah. So we have some more chats. We have Cece from Girl Gone Lux. Hi Cece.
Hi,
I
Cece.
love, yes, we love Cece. I love the natural patina process and I've never treated any of my bags. It's part of LV's unique beauty. Totally. It's how the bag ages and becomes more
Mm.
beautiful over time. 100%. That I love that golden honey patina. And so we have a follow up from the original question. Once it patinas, I know it will continue to patina, but if a sprinkle of water hits it, will it develop a new mark or is it protected? So having a little bit of early patina, will that protect it if you then get water on it? She said, "So glad I've never used Apple Guard. It's a reason I never bought a pre-loved one."
Yes. So, like I mentioned before,
Mhm.
the patina process is kind of like seasoning a cast iron
Yeah.
pan. And for an example, this bag I actually got stuck in some a light sprinkle, and you can't even tell
Mhm.
that it was rained on because I always do this too with brand new bags is I will set it in a window for like
Mhm.
3 days and every day I'll just like rotate it slowly
Yeah.
because as the vachetta is exposed to that natural light and moisture, that's how it builds that natural protectant layer. So yes, if you're caught in torrential downpour, it's going to stain pretty bad
Yeah.
probably. But little things like if you're caught in a mist or whatever, it will probably be just fine. You know, accidents
Mhm.
happen. I spilled coffee on an LV bag before. That
Mhm.
was soul crushing.
Oh, no. Did it stain?
Yes, unfortunately, but
Oh,
the good
no.
thing is over time, as leather patinas, it's less noticeable. So the bag I
Mhm.
spilled coffee on was a very vintage bag, so it had a very dark
Yeah.
patina.
Yeah.
So it kind of, you can tell, not really anymore, but
Yeah.
it's also kind of the, what I love about the patina process is the character and charm to the bag of, now every time I see it, I'm like, oh, that's when I was an oaf and spilled that cup of
Mhm.
coffee on it. It's kind of that cute
Yeah.
little memory.
And so speaking of spilling coffee, that's actually one of the worst accidents I've ever had with one of my bags. Like I literally just stopped. I was like, and I just had that moment where like my heart stopped beating. But fortunately, it was actually this bag here, this gorgeous St. Cloud. And because it's in epi leather, well, fortunately, I was getting out of the car. And of course, I was getting home with the kids from school. They like ran inside and left me with a million things to all keep. So I'm like juggling everything, and my coffee was open at the top and it spilled all down the front of my bag. So luckily I was at home, so I just ran inside and I just wiped it off with a wet cloth,
Mhm.
and it's totally fine. And that's the beauty of epi leather, is it is so durable. It just wiped right off. The only thing I was worried about was the yellow thread. I
Yeah,
did think that some of the yellow thread might stain, but I guess I got it quick enough, or it just didn't hit it as bad as I thought I did, but it all wiped off. You can't even tell.
yeah, that's good.
So,
So you are actually the one who got me into epi leather.
yes.
I'm will 100% admit this. Um, and now that I have it, I'm obsessed. You are so right. It's one of the
Mhm.
most durable materials out there. I think I've seen in vintage bags or bags in general. It's very forgiving with scratches,
Yes.
bills, all that. But yeah.
Yeah. And one of the great things I love about epi leather is it's been around since the 80s. I forget
Mhm.
exactly what year LV introduced it, but since the 80s, which it was not that long ago because I was born in the 80s, so it was really not that long ago. Um, but like it's been used over the years so much. You can get like almost any color, like so many gorgeous colors. I know you have this one, this beautiful
Yes.
castle yellow. I love this so much. And one of my favorite things about it, which is actually what sold me on the bag, is the purple lining. I don't
Yeah.
know if I think I have to unzip it. It's stuffed right now. But it's like you can get so many beautiful colors. What am I stuffing? I mean,
It's gorgeous. The
look how
contrast
gorgeous
is
that is. So beautiful. And that's what I love about it. Like you said, especially for someone like me who has kids, who's not always the most delicate with my bags. I love them for every day.
it's
I
very
mean, they're
forgiving,
just
yeah.
so perfect, and that's a beef I have with, I don't know if it matters if I name names, but Tanner Leatherstein, who
Yeah.
has exploded, speaking of handbag hair, who's someone I'm sure you know, has deconstructs bags, not just LV, but like all brands, deconstructs them and then basically like rates the leather on how good or bad it is. I still have beef and I will never let this go. When one of his reviews of Epi Leather, basically said it was not the best leather because it is so pre-treated. And I'm like, but that's the beauty of it. That's exactly why we love it so much. And I think it's unfair to place more or less value on different leathers just because it's a natural leather with minimal processing and coating. Yes, those are very beautiful, but there's a time and a place for those. And there's also a time and a place for leathers like the Epi leather, the Saffiano leather, all of these leathers with a thick coating on top. we use them all for different reasons and different purposes. So I think it's just as good. And I know a lot of other people agree with me.
Yeah.
But it rubbed me the wrong way because I disagreed with the whole analysis, first of
No,
all.
I
But
understand.
then
'Cause
people actually commented on videos that I published of epi leather and were like, "Oh, well, so and so wrote a review and that's not a good leather." And I was like, "Oh,
yeah, yeah.
it's
But
frustrating."
it comes down to beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Mhm.
I love vachetta leather because of the, art behind the patina process, all that. I just think it's so cool. And it truly is an art form the way that LV did it. At the time when LV first started using vachetta leather,
Mhm.
everyone in the fashion industry was like, that is the most ridiculous thing. That is, why would you do that? But now today,
Mhm.
that's truly what the brand is built around is vachetta leather.
Yeah.
So a lot of people hate vachetta. I love it. So it's really beauty is in the eye of the beholder when it comes down to
Yeah.
fashion.
And yeah. And that's the thing too with a lot of people, at least these days, that people who don't like vachetta, a lot of it comes down, I think 9 times out of 10 is the fear of it. The
Oh, a
fear
thousand.
of getting,
Mhm.
not like there's anything wrong with the leather itself, like you don't like the color or the look of that leather. I think for most people, it comes down to I'm afraid I'm going to ruin it. There's this thought that I can't bring it in water, I can't do this, I can't do that with it. I don't like the look of how it changes over time. So I think a lot of it is kind of fear of not knowing how to treat it and, ruining it.
Yes, I would agree with that 100%. Just because, thinking about my journey in it is when I first started getting into LV bags, it's scary because you're like, you spent so much money on this bag, you don't want to destroy it. But now for me, since like vintage is my love, I spill
Mhm.
something. Oh, it's so bad. This makes me sound so like, meh. But now I spill something on it, it's like, whatever, because it's part of like, I like to think of it as like adding character to my bag. It's what makes it my bag.
Mhm.
Very
Yeah,
personal.
I can totally relate. It's the same thing with the Neverfull. I mean, I bought this pre-loved. It was in good pre-loved condition, but there was wear to the vachetta and there was wear. And then I noticed one day that I got a big scratch on the bottom. And if
Uh-huh.
I had bought this brand new and scratched it, I would have been so upset. And not that I don't care about this, but I was like, oh, well, okay.
Yeah,
It is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. You're not
yeah.
the first person to put that dent in it, so
That is a very good aspect of buying pre-loved though, because it
mhm.
already has that wear and sense of use to it. So it makes you just want to use the bag instead of like worrying about it or being scared about it. But
Yep,
yeah.
exactly. So, we have some more chats about, epi leather, baby Scoopsy. Yes, I love epi leather too. Um, Rebecca B is on. Hey, Rebecca. Go check out Rebecca B Luxury. She's also on Instagram, and she sells a lot of fabulous pre-loved bags as well. And she said one of the standout qualities of epi leather is its durability, resistant to scratches, water, stains, making a practical choice for everyday use. 100%.
I would
And
agree.
I actually really think that for a lot of people who are like scared of certain leathers, go with epi. Like if you're just getting into luxury or your first LV bag, I know a lot of people tend to think immediately of the monogram canvas, and that was what I went with. It's what everybody knows. But I think if you are new to luxury or new to LV and you just kind of want to dip your toe, epi leather is a really great choice. And you can get great deals on epi leather these
So
days
many good
too.
ones.
And the thing I love about it is LV has been re-releasing so many bags in epi leather. It kind of got really quiet with epi for like, I would say years. It started heating up again, I would say
Yeah.
maybe like in the last 2 years. We've been seeing a lot of epi on the runway. This summer, we're getting bags in red epi leather. So go, and if you're not up to spending like $2,000 to $3,000 on a brand new bag, go with pre-loved epi. I know you got some amazing deals on
Yeah.
yours. You can easily find them still in really good condition for like four, five,
Yeah.
$600.
Definitely under that thousand mark for sure. And obviously, like with pre-loves, you have the different rankings.
Hmm.
The more wear it has, the cheaper it's gonna be. But
Yeah.
you can find some really good gems on the pre-love market. Maybe
Yes.
I know my Speedy, I got an insane deal on it, $200. It has some scratching on the underside, and I think that's why the seller priced it so low. But for me, it's part of the wear, and it's also
Yeah.
on the underside of the bag, so that didn't bother me at all.
Yep.
But yeah, you can find some really good deals.
Yeah. And yeah, we have in the chat that Rebecca B just sold me that beautiful red Clooney. Yes, she did. I do have a lot of unboxings of bags that I've purchased from Rebecca over the last few years. And yeah, gorgeous, beautiful red Clooney. I don't have it with me right now, unfortunately. I can't show it. It's downstairs. Um, but Clooney is one of those sort of under the radar bags. It's been
Mhm.
around for ages. I forget exactly when LV started making the Clooney, but it's one of those bags that's kind of always been there, but I've never heard a lot of talk about it.
Yeah.
But whenever I see anyone carrying it, I just think it looks so chic. It looks so
Mhm.
classic. And it's a gorgeous everyday bag. I think mine is in the BB size, Clooney BB, I think, which is like the middle size. There's a Clooney mini. I think there's a Clooney MM as well. But it's like so perfect for every day. I love it. I think it's one of the best bags out there. So, speaking of pre-loved, I know before we started our live stream, I was like, "Oh, we'll start talking about vintage and go in this order and that order." We're all over the
We're
place,
all
but
over
it's
the
okay.
place.
So speaking of pre-loved bags, where I know a lot of people, like a lot of us creators talk about like, "Oh, you should buy pre-loved, go vintage, you can get great deals." But I think there's also a lot of hesitation from people who are new to buying pre-loved. It can be a
Yeah.
little scary, right? It's much safer and just that peace of mind of like going into a store and buying something, you know that it's direct from the brand, and you can get that luxury experience, which I know, is part of the whole
Yeah.
draw of buying from luxury brands, is getting that whole luxury experience. But it'll cost you a pretty penny, especially these days. Since 2020, since the pandemic, prices skyrocketed. I
Yeah.
think the price increases have started to slow down a little bit now that the luxury industry is in a little bit of a recession.
Mhm.
But I mean, in the last 2 years, prices have gone up so high. So I think it is really worth looking pre-loved, but it can be a little scary if you've never done it before because like anything else, there's people out there who will take your money, who, will
Yes.
sell something not as advertised, won't disclose everything, or, worse, just plain old scammer. Um, so I thought it would be nice to share a couple tips of maybe where you and I both have bought pre-loved bags, and also some tips out there for people looking to protect themselves. So one play, which we've mentioned Rebecca B a lot. She's on the live chat
Yes.
today. Hello. So I bought from her a lot, and I'm always happy to recommend her as a seller, as a woman-owned business and a small business. I always like to support those. I like to also go to local stores. I think
Yeah.
shopping in a local store is a great way. Are you getting background noise?
Yeah, my cat is kind of running around.
Oh,
I don't
no,
know if
that's
that's what the
okay.
noise you're referring to. He's being kind of a pain right now.
No, it
But
sounded kind of like an echo or
maybe.
something.
Give me
I
one
don't know.
second. Sometimes my building's kind of older, so sometimes the heating gets kind of wonky.
Oh, let us know in the chat if anyone else is hearing background
Is that
noise.
better?
Hopefully it's not. Um, but yeah, so I think, once I find a seller that I've purchased from, normally I get those recommendations from friends or, fellow creators that I follow and trust. I'll go ahead and explore other sellers. But I also like to look at local stores. That's another thing I do. Someone with a brick and mortar, that they're not going to just close up shop and leave the next day.
Yeah.
Some people are saying they hear background noise. Okay, I'm sorry.
There.
Hmm. I don't really know what to do about that. I didn't hear it before, so hopefully it will go away soon. Anybody keep it in the chat. Let us know if it's bothersome. Yeah, it's like a microphone echo. Are you using a microphone?
I'm not, no.
Me neither. All right, I'm sorry, guys. Hopefully it's not too distracting. So I think like a brick and mortar store is a good way to go about it. You can see the product, look at it in person, ask any questions you need, and they're not going to just pack up and disappear overnight like someone online that you're not familiar with. um what do you do, Jacob?
So I'm kind of an oddball to ask because in the sense of a newbie into luxury, hearing where I buy bags, they're like, oh God. Um, I I can be very risky, but only because I have a ton of like knowledge on how to authenticate LV bags
Hmm.
and stuff like that. So I buy like 90% I buy from Japan overseas. They just have
Hmm.
an amazing selection. And also too, I don't buy bags that are in pristine condition, which I know a lot of like newbie luxury fans will probably want to do because it's your first piece, so you want to buy
Yep.
more pristine bags. So I would recommend going to places like Fashion File. I know they've been
Hmm.
kind of the big name brands have been kind of weird lately. I know there's been some
Yeah.
scandal with Rebag and the Real Real. Personally, I
Yeah.
don't like the Real Real, but Fashion
No,
File is
me
an
neither.
amazing place to buy bags. Their prices are pretty fair. You can get some good deals. So, as a newbie into luxury, I would recommend that or Instagram sellers like Rebecca.
Yes.
I've never
Uh-huh.
talked to you, Rebecca, but like those people, I would say, are the best people to buy from because if they can prove, which I know Rebecca does an amazing job with,
Hmm.
authenticity, stuff like that,
Yep.
those are the people I would recommend because they're small business owners. They're not going to take the risk of scamming people and ruining their
Exactly.
reputation. And they really pour their heart and soul into sourcing the bags, cleaning them, all that stuff. And a lot of my followers don't know this, but I've been a reseller for over 5 years now.
Hmm.
I don't resell to like the public. Mostly it's kind of been on the side for friends, family, a select group of individual people. So I have a big familiarity of stuff like that. But really, when you're a reseller, your name is everything. So resellers,
Yep.
for the most part, I hope they wouldn't want to put like gamble with things. But I would say like a really good thing to protect yourself is I always use PayPal when I purchase because there's that added
Hmm.
level of security. You can always dispute it. PayPal has been amazing for me over the years, as well as there's a ton of different things. I wouldn't necessarily
Yeah.
recommend doing Zelle or anything like that unless if you really, really know the seller. Like
Yeah.
Rebecca is a great seller, and I know that she. I would confidently send her money via
Yeah.
Zelle.
Me,
But
I have.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but that's exactly the thing, and that's a great point. A lot of these platforms, like I know PayPal and Venmo, a lot of people will, they have very high fees. So I know a lot of
Mhm.
sellers will add on that fee to the price. So, this is the price. If you pay via, PayPal, Venmo, etc., it's going to be an extra 2%, 3%. And I know a lot of people will shy away from that because you're like, oh, I'm spending this much money. Do I want to spend an extra 2%? But like you said, if it's your first time buying from a particular seller, I would
Mhm.
definitely go that avenue until maybe you bought one or two items. And then when you know someone really well, like
Yeah.
I bought many things from Rebecca over the years. I am more than happy to use Zelle, like once you've built a relationship.
Yes.
But that's one thing too. If you're unsure, if you don't know a seller, using something like PayPal for that protection, I do think it's worth the extra 3% if you
I
have
agree.
any hesitation whatsoever, if it's your first purchase. I also know a lot of platforms like eBay. I don't personally purchase through eBay, but I do know that they have policies in place to help protect buyers, to help protect sellers. Um,
So
so there's options definitely. And Girl Gone Lux chimed in again. I always recommend that the pre-love seller have a fair return policy in case you don't love it. So that's the thing. Look at the return policy, look at the authentication process, ask those questions. Any seller should be more than happy to answer those questions for you, or if they have a website set up, should have all those FAQs already outlined. And if someone won't give you a straightforward answer, move
it's not
on.
meant to be. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's one of the things too about buying pre-loved is there's that sense of I have to buy this now because it might be gone. Somebody else is going to
Yeah.
buy it. There's always only one in stock when it's
That's
pre or
FOMO.
usually only
Yeah.
one in stock when it's pre-loved. It's not like you're going into the boutique and they have, 10 speedies.
Yeah.
So I know there's a lot of that pressure, but if we're talking about things like a bag or a wallet, like an SLG or a wallet, you don't need it right away. Worst case scenario, if you miss out on one, I always think it's better to miss out. Something else will always come along later.
And I think you bring up a really, really good point. Is I always recommend. That's one of the biggest mistake, like the biggest things I've learned over the years buying
Hmm.
pre-loved is that FOMO, the fear of missing out.
Yes.
Is it buying a condition that's in less condition you wanted to, or not the color you really, really wanted, or
Hmm.
all these other caveats to maybe save a few bucks here and then, you ultimately get it and you're like, oh, the disappointment, and then you end up not
Yeah.
using it. And the nice thing about the pre-loved market is you wait a few weeks, maybe a month or two at the max, and there's another one out there. So
Yep.
I think that's the thing is like, or also too, you can message sellers like Rebecca, and they have
Hmm.
sources to source things for you.
Yep.
I from my stories, I bought from everything from fashion file to through eBay. Most of when I first started my luxury
Hmm.
journey is actually through eBay. That's where I bought a lot of my bags overseas from Japanese sellers, which that's why I say my selling history tends to be more sketch. But um, because with that you have the duties and other fees, and then with buying from Japan, you can't necessarily return it because
Yeah.
postage is so expensive to send it back. Um, but yeah, there's so many different avenues to buying pre-loved, and I think a lot of people don't know that there's different places to buy different things, and you can go to a different place depending on your comfortability. Oh my gosh,
Yep.
can't speak today. Of what you feel comfortable with. Um, but yeah, so I would say for me, my recommendations is if you're a newbie into luxury, do like a big platform like Fashion File or go
Hmm.
to Instagram sellers. You can really, once you start conversations with them, you really understand their policies and stuff. And on top of that, too, a lot of people will also like kind of poo poo those sellers and be like, but their stuff is so expensive compared to other things. Well, you also have to realize that they're the ones fronting the bill for those authentication fees, the products to clean it, the shipping costs, all that stuff
Hmm.
that a mega $1 million company to them, they sell so much that that is a fraction of it. And for me,
Yeah.
I would definitely spend $200-300 more depending on what the bag is if I know that where I'm buying it from is trustworthy and it's supporting a seller in a good way, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. And in the chats, we have Maria who said that she's a newbie to buying pre-loved and it's scary to find sellers to trust. Yeah, 100%. She
Yes.
said, I have found that meeting people on the lives and seeing who they trust to buy from has helped me to find other sellers.
Hmm.
And that is a really great point.
Yeah.
When you go on the lives or even just on a seller's webpage, I have totally done that before where I found a new seller and I'm like, "Oh, who is this person? Let me see who's following them. Let me see, do we have any mutual contacts?" And
Mhm.
reach out, DM someone if you know someone else that follows the same person. DM, have you ever purchased from this person before? How was the experience? I always try to get personal referrals whenever I can, and that's actually how I found Rebecca was through someone else who's not really too active anymore. But she was when she was very active a couple years ago. She had purchased from Rebecca, and then I went on the lives, and then I started buying. So it's always nice to look for those references, and if it's someone, even just someone else that you follow online, you
Yeah.
know, DM, ask a question. And I always like to look through the posts as well. Sometimes I'll
Yeah.
see these sellers where they're like not really legitimate sellers. And you'll see like 50 posts, but the first post was from like last week. Where they're just trying to post all these pictures and look like they have this huge history, but when you actually look at the pictures, you know, they've only been around for a week. They're still a new account. So, there's little things that you can look out for like that. But I always just go with people, who people recommend.
Exactly. And also too, for maybe people that are more in that intermediate to, I don't want to say like expert, because no one's an expert.
Advanced.
Advanced, yes, because no one's an expert at the end of the day.
Hmm.
But for me, I buy a ton from overseas, and I've taught myself over the years what things to look out for in the sense of tips for authenticating bags. And the
Hmm.
biggest thing I've found is that legitimate sellers, they will always have photos of the things you need to authenticate a bag in the
Hmm.
sense of like serial codes or date codes,
Yeah.
the heat stamps. They'll have full photos and clear photos of the bags. They'll have full photos of the damages associated to the bag and stuff
Hmm.
like that. And also, too, reputable sellers, if you message them and say, hey, you forgot the photo of this, I would like to see
Hmm.
this. If they're a good seller, they will send it to you, no
Yep.
questions asked. And also, too, on top of that, is whenever I'm in doubt, because I don't have all the experience in the world,
Hmm.
is take those photos and send it to an authenticator. It costs 10
Yep.
bucks, and especially too when I'm buying from overseas in Japan where you know, the bag is going to cost half the amount to send it back to get my
Yeah.
money back. You want to be 1,000% sure that what you're buying is authentic and in the same quality. So I've made a lot of friendships with overseas sellers too, where they are more than willing to explain their business, how it started, what their authentication processes are. They'll send you more
Yeah.
photos. I've even had a Japanese seller call me what was it, like midnight over the phone.
Yeah.
And we just got to talking because I wanted to buy a ton of bags from them. But yeah, I feel like just know what questions to ask and the tips for you just do your research in general. I think you'll be perfectly fine. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and definitely 100% always get it double second authentication just in case.
Mhm.
That's one of the things I love about, Rebecca, for example, since I don't know, we keep talking about her now. She uses entropy to
Yes.
authenticate back. So they come with a certificate of authenticity. I know Fashion File, they what do they do? In-house
They
authentication,
do.
right? I think they do authentication in-house, but it comes with a certificate of authenticity. And then you have that layer of like peace of
Yeah.
mind, but then
Mm,
always go out and get a second opinion. Like you said, it costs 10, $15.
yeah.
The authenticator will tell you exactly what photos they need, send
Hmm.
it over, get a second opinion, because there are a lot of little things that we can look for, that we might know that
Uh-huh.
something's real or not real, but an authenticator always knows more. There's always these extra
Mhm.
little things to check that we might not think to check.
And
I
that's the
would
thing
always get a
too.
second opinion.
Yeah. And also, I'll note too is I know entropy is the new standard in the pre-loved industry, but
Yeah.
for me, I personally don't necessarily find it as comforting as an
Oh,
authenticator.
really? Okay.
Yes, I know this is very controversial, probably some other, but because the bags I like to buy, like for example, this Gucci bag is from the early
Yes.
60s. It's super, super old. And if
Mhm.
you, the way entropy works, it goes and matches them to the huge database of millions of photos it
Yes.
has on file, and it'll tell you if it's real or fake. Well, the thing
Mhm.
is, it doesn't necessarily have all the information to do really old bags. Like, for example, this Gucci bag has a pigskin lining. So it
Oh,
might come back as counterfeit because the technology just doesn't have that much information. Whereas
yeah.
that's why I like for brands like Prada and Gucci, really, really old things, I like to use Dr. Runway because
Okay.
they have the experts who know all that stuff. And
Mhm.
another thing too about them is it's kind of like Lila's luxuries, and
Lila's Luxuries, yes.
she's so information like
Yeah.
the other day, I got a dust bag in with one of my pre-loved purchases. Never seen it before, and I messaged her and I was like, "Hey, have you ever seen this before?" And she's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, you're good." But that's the thing is, these people, this is their again, it's their reputation, it's their love and passion. So
Mhm.
what they do for a living, and they have a lot of times have really teams associated to specific brands and stuff like that. But I love Dr. Runway because I've had questions before. I paid for the authentication. And
Mhm.
even too for verbal authentications, there's times where I'm like, hey, this is information I have. How did you come to this census? And they'll say,
Yeah.
associated to this bag and during this time period, this is how they manufactured X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
So that's another thing too is don't always be scared about third-party authenticators. If they're
Mhm.
reputable, they will give you that added extra information.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for LV, 100% Leah's Luxuries.
Mhm.
And that's what I always like to do. If I know someone who's an authenticator to it just for a specific brand, I always opt to go for
Yeah.
them. I mean, of course, I don't know an authenticator who specializes in every single brand.
Mhm.
So sometimes I will go to a general authentication service. But for LV, Leah's Luxuries is great. And Chanel, because I only have ever bought Chanel pre-loved. I use Zico's authentication,
Yes.
and she's
Mhm.
like the expert on, and I can genuinely say
Yes.
expert. She is an expert on Chanel.
Yes.
So I always use her for authentication, and I've actually sold through her before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was a really great process. So I sold my Chanel jumbo flap a couple years ago, and no, last year. Last year. And I went through her. It was great because it can be really costly to sell bags if you're not comfortable selling them yourself, and
Yeah.
which I am not. I don't want to take on the responsibility of shipping, insurance, taking photos, finding a buyer. So whenever I sell anything, I always opt to go through a consigner who will sell it for me. And I went through her with Chanel, which was wonderful because especially for a classic flap, I mean, for, a bag that's like several $1,000s, when most consigners charge a percentage, it can really eat into how much money you'll make back on the bag. So for like a $7,000 bag, I didn't want to pay like a 10% commission. So she did hers for a flat fee, which was absolutely wonderful. She was the middleman. So I sent the bag to her. She again authenticated it, then sent it to the buyer. I sent it to her. It took her 1 day
Oh
to get
wow.
a buyer lined up. So it was like super quick turnaround. So yeah, she's wonderful.
Yeah, I would definitely say too, like that's the thing is, I've heard Baba Baby is good for Hermes. They only do
Yes.
Hermes.
Yes.
I love Dr. Runway because they specialize in vintage bags. So like vintage Loewe, vintage Celine, vintage Fendi. That's who I like to use for all my vintage
Yeah.
brands. Because I pretty much know how to authenticate LV myself, but other brands I'm not too as familiar with. So I like to
Yeah.
use that trusted person with that knowledge. But yeah, there's a lot of good knowledgeable people out there.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. And as much as I love LV in particular and other luxury brands, I'm not going to authenticate anything myself.
Yeah,
So as long I have things that I can look for that I know are for sure fake or not, but I would never authenticate something for someone else.
yeah,
So that is another tip because I have had people DM me and say, "I want to buy this bag. Is it fake or is it real?" And I'm like, "Please don't ask me. I know
yeah,
I talk about these things a lot, but I'm not a professional authenticator. Go get a professional opinion."
yeah.
I'll let you know if I see anything that looks obvious, but don't go by my word.
Yes. I'm the
So
same way as I'll look at images and tell you my opinion, but that's also just my opinion. I'm not an
yeah,
expert. But yeah, always
exactly.
always get that. And that's the thing too is newbies is I always recommend send those pictures before you buy it, and then when you receive it,
Yeah,
send those pictures again. And don't I don't even recommend using the same authenticator. If you
that's a
buy
good
send the
point.
pictures when you first get it to, let's say, Real Authentication, and then when you get it, send it to Dr. Runway, because there's been times where some authenticators will have conflicting information, which is kind of scary, but
Yeah.
but it's also too, it's like humans make mistakes, so
That's true.
it's bound to happen. Same with entropy. I've seen that make mistakes too.
Yeah.
It's all based on information. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, question for you.
Yes.
Little story time. Have you had any times where you've gotten a bag authenticated and it came back as inconclusive or inauthentic? And if you have, what happened? Like what did you do with it?
So, knock on wood, I've never had a bag
Okay.
that's been fake. Because I don't know, it's scary to think that I'm just that lucky, I guess. But there was one time I had a really, really vintage bag that it was a vintage LV Speedy 40, and the bag itself was very dirty, and the patina,
Mm.
like the leather on it, like the leather just had this like grayish hue to it,
Oh, yeah.
and it just looked so funky and off to me that I was like, you know what? I feel like it's real, but I just want that peace of mind. So I sent it, and also too, the hardware was
Mm.
off, and I sent it to an authenticator, and they're like, "Nope, it's authentic." And I asked, like, "Can you explain why?" And they're like, "Yep, the heat stamp for this specific era, because it was an '80s bag, was conclusive to the time period of that bag, whereas you
Okay.
probably thought it was fake because of the heat stamp associated to like the '90s, 2000s, so on and so forth." So that's also a thing too. Is like, even though I've been reselling for years, I've
Mhm.
had my hands on hundreds of bags over the years. I'm not
Yeah.
an expert. So also too, I recently bought a vintage Fendi bag where I did my own research, and I was like, I just something about it just seems
Yeah.
off. Sent it, same thing happened. It was authentic. I
Yeah.
just over panicked myself, but 100%, if you're ever unsure, just do it. Spend the
Yeah.
$10.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of buying vintage, are
Hmm.
there any deal breakers for you when buying vintage? Is there anything that you would like hands down avoid?
Yeah.
So for me personally, one is odor. I
Yeah.
know that there are solutions to that, and I have seen you do tutorials on how
Yeah.
to remove odors from bags, but I don't care. You can tell me as much until you're blue in the face that you can take odors out. I don't want to deal with it.
Oh,
Like for me
100,000%.
personally, that's a deal breaker. But is there
Yes.
anything in terms of like condition and repair that are like very difficult or maybe virtually impossible to repair that you should avoid? Like some things that immediately come to mind are cracked leather, peeling with canvas, or peeling inside bags, or what else? Odor was another one. Do you have any deal breakers that it's
Yes.
best to avoid?
Yes. So the first thing I want to start with is I always like to tell people that to understand how wear and tear on a bag works, you
Hmm.
have to understand how the construction of the bag is made. So
Hmm.
if you have, because I buy vintage bags and I'll buy bags with cracks on the leather, no problem. But the cracks are in areas that I know won't, it's just from normal wear and tear. It's not like
That's
I'm gonna
true.
wear it and the strap is gonna rip off. So
Hmm.
totes, I would say vintage to any totes that have cracks in the handles. Um, Louis Vuitton, the chaps tend to crack very
Hmm.
frequently on bags. If there's any cracking in that, avoid it.
Okay.
It's over time. It's just gonna break. If leather looks very dry, I for vintage bags, I would avoid it because even
Yeah.
if you condition the crap out of it, eventually it's going to need to be replaced, which is
Yeah.
very expensive and pricey. Because a lot of newbies think that, oh, like if I condition a bag, it'll be fine, it'll be perfect. Well, that's not
Yeah.
necessarily true because wear depends on different things: how much weight you put in the bag, how you're wearing it,
Mhm.
crossbody, so on and so forth. Um, the older a bag gets, the more susceptible to wear and these defects
Mhm.
over time. It's just part of using an item. But the biggest like no-nos I say is tobacco smoke, cigarette smoke,
Okay.
and mold. Those are my two
Okay.
biggest no-nos because tobacco smoke, it is one of the hardest things to get out of
Mhm.
a bag. It is just, and again, you need to understand how odors work. It is just the stuff in tobacco is just, it's really hard to remove. Oh, also too,
Yeah.
mothballs. Uh,
Oh.
there's no way to get rid of mothballs because of the way mothballs are formulated. They're made to last a long time. So no matter what
Mhm.
chemicals you throw on it, 9 times out of 10, it's just going to make it worse. So if it has a moth,
Really?
yes, yes, I've learned
Oh.
the hard way so many times because
Yeah.
like I'll see in a listing, oh, it has slight tobacco odor, and then I get it, I'm like, that was
Slight.
not slight. um, so when it comes to it, tobacco, mothball odors, it's just stay away. It's better to avoid that. And then mold. If you see any
Yes.
sort of green or white specks on it, do not buy it.
Yeah.
Because another thing too is mold spores. You have to kill them to get rid of them. And I've also learned this the hard way too. Is if you have a bag that even if you remove the mold spores from the bag, you wipe it out with cleaner, they're still living in there, and it's just going to be a
Mhm.
matter of time before they start growing again. And that's the thing is mold, it goes dormant until the conditions for it to grow are created again. So if you take it out on a
Mhm.
hot summer day, it gets that moisture, then all of a sudden it's like, ooh, we can thrive again.
Yeah.
But that's the thing
Exactly.
is, if you put a moldy bag in your collection, it will
Will it spread?
it will spread to other bags. I've had that happen where I was first new to luxury, bought a vintage bag that had so like a little patch, a very like quarter size patch that I
Yeah.
removed, and it just happened to be put on my shelf next to another bag,
Oh
and
no.
then it spread to 4 bags that I had to get rid of out of my collection.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and that is the thing with mold. I'm personally, knock on wood, I haven't had any issues with mold ever. But someone I follow with and have become friends with on Instagram who lives in the Southeast Asia area,
yes,
which is very humid, and I know mold is an issue there. They store their bags in, and I've seen photos of it in like a nice, very nice cupboard with like dehumidifiers and those silica gel packets and mold. They've had mold on bags, have gotten the bags sent to spa, professionally clean, have the professional mold removal, storing it in good conditions, but then it has still come back.
yes. And like I said,
So it is very difficult, even if it's professionally cleaned,
yes.
that it will come back, like you said, when the conditions are right.
Well, because that's the thing that people don't realize is to fully eradicate mold, you have to use very, very harsh chemicals that are going to break down the molecules of that mold spore and kill it. And
Mhm.
with these expensive things, you can't use bleach and all these excessive chemicals
Yeah.
on them because it would
On
destroy
leather.
the bag.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is I've used this UV ray, which
Uh-huh.
is controversial as well. But this is
You're a
one of the
very controversial guest.
very controversial, is that the UV rays will kill the mold spores, but
Mhm.
it's only up to a certain point. So that's a thing to be mindful of is mold, and also to how you store a bag. If you live in a very, very humid environment, that's really the only time I'd recommend avoid the dust bag. Just the
Yeah.
more air it's exposed to out in the open, the less likely it's going to grow molds over time or you know but yeah,
Yeah. Interesting. I actually store all my bags in dust bags.
I do too.
So,
I stuff them with my bubble wrap and then I put them in their dust bags, make them all cute.
yeah, it fell on the floor, but yes, when I open this up, I usually put in bubble wraps. I have tried those purse pillows.
Hmm.
I haven't bought any, but I was gifted one. And I do like it. I like that it's made exactly to the shape of the bag. So, like epi leather, you don't really need that much stuffing, but something like a Neverfull, I do like it because even
Yeah.
when you have it stuffed, you have to like really press it in if you want to maintain the shape of the corners.
Hmm.
So I have tried the purse pillows, and I mean, they're expensive if you want to spend money, if you have like an expensive bag. I wouldn't do it for every bag in my collection though. But yeah, I'll do that and then just keep them in the dust bag up
Yeah.
on the shelf. But
the,
I don't live in a particularly humid climate, so
the only thing I would advise with purse pillows is I don't recommend really using them for structured bags just because I
mm,
put a purse pillow in my Chanel 19 and it actually caused the leather to stretch out and expand, creating
oh,
it to be super saggy when I wear it now. So that's
oh,
another thing to be
interesting.
mindful too is any like if the bag is very flexible, malleable, or like
Yeah,
made of leather, maybe just avoid that just because if you
good to
overstuff it,
know.
it can warp the shape of the bag. But
Good
yeah.
to know.
Hmm.
And that's the other thing I always recommend too, talking about bag storage, is periodically checking on your bags,
Yes.
moving things from one position to another, especially if you have handles
Yes.
that sit down on the bag, store the handles up,
Hmm.
or chains, especially with bags that have a softer leather. So I always go through and sort of like, reposition my bag, like if there's
Yeah.
like for my Chanel reissue, like where the chain sits on top, I'll just move it over a little bit if I haven't used it in a while. But then that's also a good excuse to use your bags.
Yes. That is very
Go
true.
through that rotation, check on them, and just make sure that there's nothing coming up,
Yeah.
if you stored it and it's in the dust bag that could be happening that you're not seeing.
Yes, that is very true. Hmm.
So good. So, let's see. I had some other questions. If we could circle back
Yeah.
to vachetta leather.
Hmm.
because I did get some questions on vachetta, and I know we've been spending a lot of time on pre-loved bags and vintage bags, but we haven't talked about new bags and what to do with new bags. So I have two questions about brand new from the boutique purchases. They both up you disappear. Okay, there you are.
Sorry.
They both actually have to do with vachetta leather. And the first one is if leather is wrinkled. And it's so funny because I was shopping a few months ago with my friend Megan, who's also on YouTube, and she was looking at Speedies, and the vachetta leather on the Speedy was wrinkled. So she opted not to get the bag. But if there's wrinkles in the leather, um, what can you do to smooth them out, or will the wrinkles always be there? And for the wrinkled vachetta, is it prone due to the wrinkles to cracking or wearing quicker than a nice smooth new vachetta?
Yes, those are very, very, very good questions. And again, as I will keep circling back to understand that, is you have to understand the construction of these bags.
Mhm,
Um, Leather is just like our skin. It's going to get wrinkly over time with use. You know, a strap is really prone to, like, because of the flexibility, it's going to get
mhm,
wrinkles. However, it is very important to be mindful of those wrinkles because that can be signs of quality defects. For
mhm.
example, on a bandolier strap, if it looks like the wrinkles are forming on like a speedy bandolier because it's sewn, like squished in,
Yeah.
yes, over time, if those wrinkles are because it's defectively sewn into the bag, and more than likely the pressure over the years will cause it to break.
Mm.
However, if it's on like a strap or something, if you are using it like normal, not abusing it, as the bag gets older and you condition the vachetta, no, it should be just fine. A lot of people don't like wrinkles because, you know, it is not the pristine bag. I personally don't
Yeah.
mind them. I just think it's to just be mindful of where the wrinkles are. Because no,
Mhm,
you can't get rid of wrinkles. It's just part of the process of the vachetta, of how it's formed to the bag. But again, circling back, if it's
mhm.
in an area where it's looks like it's because it was sewn in like improperly, yes, it could cause problems over time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm glad you answered that. We actually talked about that question before the live, and I was like, I actually don't know because I've never experienced that. If I'm buying something new from the boutique, if I see that, I would just not take it.
Yeah.
That's part of it. I think especially when we're paying
Mm.
such high money for these pieces, I would want it in
Yeah.
pristine condition for that price.
Mhm.
Um, so let's say we do buy that bag with the vachetta leather. Um, I always just, we talked about Apple Guard earlier. I don't spray mine. I don't even sun my bag. So, like you said, set it in a window for a couple days, rotate it, let the sun,
Mhm.
start that patina process before wearing it. I don't even do that. Do
Yeah.
you recommend that for a brand new vachetta from the store?
I personally recommend it because it sets that base tan in the sense of that
Yeah.
kind of creating the foundation of the vachetta and making sure that it's all going to patina evenly as it's
Really?
exposed while you're wearing it. But it's really not necessary. Vachetta
Mhm.
is going to patina naturally either way. You know, even with it
Yeah.
just sitting in a dust bag, this bag, I hate to say it, I don't use her that often. And I even pulled her out and I was like, wow, you're looking dark. um, but, but yeah, so even when it's in a dark and closed space, it's still going to patina. So
Mhm.
it's fine. Like you don't have to do it. I'm just OCD and I like to do it.
Yeah.
But no, it's really not necessary. But yeah, even I'll circle back to it too with Apple Guard. I highly don't recommend it. But also, like I mentioned before, if you're the type of person where you are super OCD about your bags and you know you are fine with possibly having to replace your leather down the
Mhm.
road, then go ahead and do it. If it gives you peace of mind, then I'd say why not, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah.
So now let's talk a little bit about regular maintenance, since I think this is a good segue. Um, my personal philosophy, again, because I'm not an expert on handbag care, that's what I have you for. I always like look at your posts, your reels. I've learned so much from you over the years.
Thank
And
you.
whenever I get questions, I always recommend you. So for me personally, less is more. When I get a bag brand new from the store, I really don't do anything to it,
Mhm.
particularly if it's like the damier ebene canvas with the treated leather. There's really nothing to do with the epi leather and the
Yeah.
empreinte leather. There's really nothing to do. Um, but then for regular maintenance, I do as little as possible. We'll talk about the brand new bags first, and then we'll talk about maintenance for vintage bags. What do you recommend for someone who's new for like, what's the baseline? What's the minimum that you recommend doing for your bags?
Yes, I 1,000% agree with you in the sense of less is more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, when it comes to a brand new bag, it's brand new.
Yeah.
It doesn't need a lot of maintenance. The maybe thing I would recommend is like just for like a sanitary purpose, like every few wears, I like to wipe my canvas down with a water wipe or like with just
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a gentle soap if it's really grimy. Um,
Yeah.
Otherwise, for vachetta leather, I don't do anything to it. I know a lot of people will say like, "Oh, I like to wipe it down with like water wipes to keep it clean." Again, it's not necessary. It's gonna patina on its own. Canvas, in full honesty, I know I do a lot of canvas care things. Unless if I'm crazily using a bag, I don't do that. I maybe do that once a year. Um,
Okay.
my luggage piece, this girl has seen airports, backs of trunks, everything. She has been used and abused. This is probably the bag I cleaned the most, just because like airports are disgusting.
Yeah.
Airplanes are gross. It has a lot of scratches and dents and canvas scrapes and all that. So I probably will clean the canvas on this really, really regular, only because I want to prevent the canvas from like warping or scratching and all that. But yeah, normally I think the less is more approach is perfectly fine. I think you really don't need to do a lot to your bags. As
Yeah.
long as you keep them stuffed when they're stored, wipe them down every once in a while. If the canvas looks dirty, I
Mhm.
think you'll be more than fine. Also, too, another
Okay.
thing to note is a lot of people don't know this, but I know empreinte is like a huge craze right now, and a lot of people
Yeah.
always ask me, "Do I need to condition empreinte leather? Do I need to condition treated leather?" And the answer
Mhm.
is treated leather first. No, you don't need to do it
Mhm.
because the way the bag is produced, it has that protective coating on it, so you
Yeah.
don't have to condition it. It's kind of you're conditioning plastic, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Empreinte leather is I actually would avoid at all costs, even as the bag ages, because it's a soft and supple leather that actually, if you condition the leather or wipe it down with water a lot, the embossing of the LV will actually come out. So that's
Really?
one bag
Oh.
I actually recommend not doing anything to unless if it's
Yeah.
absolutely necessary. But
Good.
yeah.
Well, I've never done that to my so here we have an example. This is the bicolor empreinte. I never have done anything to this
Yeah, which I think is
at all.
perfectly fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because also too, I see the bicolor. That's actually the embossing is screen
Mhm.
printed. So I've seen too where
Mhm.
people have on the first form where they've like vigorously washed it with soap and water, and the screen prints actually come off.
So
So
this color here has faded.
yes.
They've
So
wiped it
I would
off.
say
Yeah.
if you ever for I don't, for any reason something splashes on it or whatever, just take maybe like a little Dawn dish soap and water and like very dilute it, wipe it a little bit,
Yeah.
dry it off right away, and it'll be good as new. But yeah.
Perfect. And that's also a good point too about the water for the water wipes. So I use just in a pack of the baby wipes,
Hmm.
but regular baby wipes have alcohol in them.
Yes. I use
So
this.
make sure that they say water only, like water wipes brand,
Yes,
or like you have, yeah. So, and I know some people might not think of that, that there is a difference between the normal like baby wipes and
water.
water wipes.
Yes. And that's
So
the thing
make
too.
sure they're water wipes.
Yeah, so I use these Hello Bello, and straight on the package it says 99% water.
Yep.
And then you look at the other stuff, and it's really just like aloe and stuff like that, which isn't going to harm canvas or anything like that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that is a really good point, too, is I get asked that all the time, is you say baby wipes, and leather care experts say don't use them. And it's like, yeah, they're probably not the best if you, but those are also baby wipes that have all those chemicals and stuff. I use the water wipe.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But that is good to know that less is more.
Yes.
You really don't have to do a lot. And yeah, like in terms of conditioning, it's when this untreated leather
Yes. Okay.
starts to, you know,
hmm
what?
I would say going into
Yeah.
that is even a lot of newbies too. They ask me like, "Oh, I just bought a bag. Do I need to condition it?" No.
Mhm.
Really, I want to say like your patina looks really, really good. How old is your bag?
This is from, I believe, 2014.
2014. Okay, so she's
I
still
bought it
pretty
in
new yet.
20. Oh no, this is from 2008.
Oh,
I was
jeez.
completely off. This is from 2008.
Okay, yeah. So
May
that is
May
probably
2008. And
yeah.
I
That's
love this,
probably
and I specifically bought this because it has the, maybe
the
that's why I thought
flowy.
20, I think it was 2014 when they changed the design in here. I
Oh, I
loved this older print.
I will admit. So went through my never full phase, and I have my new model, and I bought an old model GM because that's my favorite bag is the never full
Uh-huh.
GM, and I bought the old model just for that fleur de lis print.
Yes.
And then finally I was like, Jacob, this is so stupid. You have two of the same bag. So I sold it. But yeah, no, I understand. It's so cute, the little miniature like
I
flowers and all
know.
that. But yeah, I would
So,
say new bags, as long as you're wearing them and not like overly wearing them, abusing them, you shouldn't have
mhm.
to condition leather until it really starts to turn that golden patina, or unless like this Monsterie backpack is from the 90s, and I don't really condition her a lot because it has that honey patina. It's more of being conscious of the signs of dryness, which is
Mhm.
if the leather starts to look matte, if it has kind of that sheen of like dryness to it, it's probably time to condition it.
Yeah.
But yeah, less is always more. Like this one, the corners, I used this recently and it's kind of drying out. I should probably condition that. But,
So how often do you like have a like a schedule, or like a period of time that you'll go through and look at all your bags and see what needs to be done and then take care of them?
honestly, no, I don't. Um, the thing I want to know is if you store your bags in dust bags, it actually helps the leather keep their moisture.
Mm,
So, bags that are just sitting on my shelf, I need to condition probably every few months because it is exposed to the air and all of that. I have to plug you guys in, running out of battery. um, but no, I would say that it's not really.
plug my phone in.
I don't really have a schedule. It's more of I'm mindful of if I say I pull my bag out and it's a vintage bag and I'm using it repeatedly and
Hmm.
it's getting that excessive wear to the leather, then I'll condition it more regularly
Yeah.
because I've been using it. But if it's just
Mhm.
sitting on my shelf, it maybe could be 3, 4, 5 months before I touch it and
Yeah.
condition. Um,
Okay.
but yeah.
Maybe like a little biannual check-in
Yes, a little
is like a
biannual
good,
check-in.
if
That's what she
someone's
said.
looking for a schedule, how often.
Yes.
Um,
Mhm.
so I just had another, oh, what was my other question? I just had something to go off of that. Oh yeah, so for new bags, it's kind of like right out of the gate, you're good to go, and then just look for wear over time. and
Yes.
then treat it as needed. But
Hmm.
for vintage bags or pre-loved bags, so my game plan that I always do is I just do an initial cleaning,
Hmm.
and it's generally just like I'll start with just like a water wipe. I won't use any soap or anything. I'll kind of see what comes off, let it
Yeah.
dry out, maybe do another round, and if it looks pretty clean from there, I just leave it alone. If I need anything more, I'll use like you said, a very very diluted little bit of soap, and then just let everything dry thoroughly. So other than the cleaning, I don't typically do a lot. I do like to really clean out the inside a lot. I'll go in with just like a really small little handbag and make sure there's no crumbs or anything. I will use, if it's like a fabric, I'll use like a little lint roller. What else do you recommend, or what else do you do when you buy vintage or pre-loved bags?
So when I buy a pre-loved bag, a vintage bag, and it comes in, the first thing I'll do is clean the canvas. So like you said, I'll take a
Hmm.
baby wipe or a damp towel, wipe it off, and kind of go from there and see how it is. A lot of these bags that are 20, 30 years old, especially when you buy from Japan, these wholesalers don't really care about cleaning them, and they've just been
Yeah,
sitting in a dirty shelf for a while, so they are pretty
yeah,
gross and grimy.
yeah.
So that's where I'll use my like canvas care products to really
Okay.
lift and deep clean. But in a sense of when I first get a bag, if it looks like it's not that dirty and I wipe it off with water wipes and it's fine, then it's fine.
Yeah.
Um, and then from there, I'll like condition the leather, go in, clean the hardware if it's really like dirty and grimy. It kind of
Mhm.
really depends on what the bag needs. Like for example, this trapeze PM, when I got her, she was a project bag, so she needed a lot of
Yeah.
care and love. Like I removed a ton of ink stains from the interior,
Mm.
cleaned like there's like a big dirt stain on the bottom that I cleaned off. And then the mini lane, it's canvas, so it needed some
Yeah.
kind of spot treatment, but I think it's really dependent on the bag itself and the material is, and like
Mhm.
if it looks really like dirty and used, and like kind of to base it and then go from there.
Yeah. Now
Mhm.
I know that leather is, relatively easy to, as long as it's not damaged, relatively easy to clean it up, condition it, do what you need to it. How would you say is canvas or fabric bags? And I think those are a little bit more difficult. If you see wear on it, you're really not going to be able to clean it and have that wear go away.
Yeah.
What would you say about that for people shopping for pre-loved fabric, canvas, not like uncoated canvas or like
Yes.
denim bags? Because I know denim is really hot right now.
Yes, denim is really hot right now. I would say, actually, I have this cute little vintage Prada nylon toe. The biggest thing to look out for canvas bags is corner wear. Because of
Okay.
the material itself, it is very prone to like the corners wearing out. And
Hmm.
canvas material, once it starts to fray and tear, it's a matter of time before those all those threads start to loosen and it gets worse and worse and worse. You can take it to a professional like restorer and they can stitch it back together, but that's also it's a temporary fix.
Yeah.
um, you kind of, once it starts to go, it starts to go. You can keep putting band-aids on it, but it's not really going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
um, Nylon tends to be very, very durable. Same with denim. The more like thicker
Okay.
denim tends to be very hard wearing. Mini lin, on the other hand, is like a thinner denim, so that
Yeah.
tends to wear out. Those you'll see like vintage mini lin, never full speedies, and all that will have the corners all like ripped to shreds.
Yeah.
But I would say also too, be very mindful when cleaning those. A lot of people, when they'll get a nylon bag, their first thought is like, "Oh, it's fabric. It's fine. I'll just toss it in the washing machine in a
Yeah.
drying bag and it'll be fine." Yes, you can do that, but also too, like the older a bag is, the more susceptible it is to damage. So if you throw it in the washing machine, it can strip the color out of the fabric and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So again, less is always more. I like to spot treat it and kind of go from there. If I can remove it with a little damp soapy water and kind of scrub it, then it's fine. If not, maybe I'll go into like an upholstery cleaner, like this Woolite that's specialized
Mhm.
for like carpets and linens and stuff like that before I go into maybe something more aggressive like this Angelus foam tax. So it's kind
Mhm.
of like that step process of trial and error. You don't want to just quick go into something harsh because then you could
Exactly.
possibly do more damage than good in the
Mhm.
end. So yeah.
Yeah. So all those little products that you just showed us there,
Yes.
how can we get a look at what products you recommend?
So actually on my Instagram, I have in my story highlight my handbag care guide. It
Mhm.
is kind of outdated because I'm always trying new stuff, but those have been my staple products that are highlighted in there that I've been using
Okay.
for years. So like my number one, everyone always asks me like, "What's your favorite leather conditioner?"
Mhm.
Cadillac. I swear by this. And a lot of people
Yeah.
don't know this, but Apple brand
That's what
is
I have.
is pretty much the same. So people don't know
Oh.
this, but the manufacturer manufactures the same products. They're just privately labeled to different brands. So these like the Apple brand leather conditioner in Cadillac is like so similar. It's just I like Cadillac because it comes in bigger bottles. And it's also I feel like it tends to keep vachetta in better
Uh-huh.
shape over time, moisture wise, as well as
Mhm.
it's less prone to darkening vachetta, which is very important
Okay.
because vintage bags, that's where a lot of people see it, is it may look brighter than what it is, and then you put conditioner on it, and then the true rich color comes out, and people are like, "Ugh, it's so dark
Yeah.
out." um, but yeah, so I think my staple products are, you said this before, a lint roller, a good leather
Mhm.
conditioner, um, baby wipes, not really necessary, wax paper for smoothing zippers. I like to use cotton rounds because I think it's the easiest thing to apply, like
Okay.
cleaners and conditioners.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think it really depends on how like in depth you want to go for cleaning.
Yeah.
But I'd say those products are probably like
Yeah.
the most basic, simple things will do good for any bag. Good leather
Yeah.
conditioner, cleaner, maybe some hardware polish like Brasso.
Okay.
But yeah,
Yeah, and that's the one thing we haven't talked about yet is the hardware. So
yes,
the wax paper you showed us, so that is for sticky or yeah, I
zippers.
guess you would call it like a sticky zipper. You rub the wax paper over the zipper teeth.
Yes.
I don't
Hmm.
have any. Oh, I do have a bag with zippers. So you would just rub the wax paper over here and it smooths it out so it's easier to zip. And then for the hardware, I I wouldn't do anything to my hardware unless it's started to tarnish, and that's what you use the Brasso for?
Yes. So I personally, when I first got into luxury, I was obsessed with the shiny hardware. But the thing
Mhm.
about it is like the natural, it's just like metal patina is just like vachetta. So a few days later, it's going to start to look tarnished again. So I
Yeah.
really only polish my vintage bags like when I first get them or every few years when the tarnish is really
Yeah.
built up and bad. But another thing to note is the difference between vintage hardware and new hardware, because vintage hardware
That's
is that
true.
solid brass, and new hardware is brass plated. So a
Mhm.
lot of times I'll see newbies, they get it and they're like, "Oh, my hardware is doesn't look as shiny as I want it to be." They take
Yeah.
something harsh like Brasso and then it strips the plating off of the hardware. So
Mhm.
something like plated hardware, I recommend like a jeweler's polishing cloth. I like to use it's by Sun. I think it's called like Sun brand polish or something like that. It's
Okay.
linked in my handbag care product guide, but something like brass plated, I tend to recommend a jeweler's polishing cloth where it's more of
Okay.
a lighter chemical. Whereas something
Mhm.
like Barkeeper's Friend or Brasso is tend to be made for like deep cleaning, like brass,
The
silver,
solid brass.
yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's also super messy too. I think that's why I avoid it
Yeah.
because like the process, it smells bad, and then you get it everywhere, and it's just a giant mess. um, But yeah, Brasso's amazing. I love a good jeweler's polishing cloth. It tends to take all of that dirt and grime off. But yeah, I tend to not really clean my hardware a whole bunch.
Yeah. And yeah, that's a great point with the Brasso. I have some. I mean, also just because we have some for, just other things, not just my
Yeah.
handbags. But I've actually never used it on a bag just because, like you said, it's kind of a mess. And I'm like, eh. The only thing I've ever really needed to like use it on that's gotten that tarnished is actually the locks, which is
Yes.
nice because they're not attached to the bag. So you can get in there and you're not going to get any on the leather. But yeah, it is just kind of messy.
Yeah.
So,
Um, sorry, what were you
yeah.
gonna say?
No, I was gonna move on to another question, but
No, you're
did
good.
you have
I'm good.
okay. So we had another question come in from D over on the chats. Oh, we also had Vivian Carlene say hello, hello, and happy
Hi.
Sunday. So D has a question about two specific bags: a Celine Boston bag and a pre-loved Damier Ebene Speedy 30. Oh, Maritza said hello too. Hi. So for the Damier Ben Speedy 30 vintage, so she asked, how would you care for these two bags? I have a lot of the products that Jacob recommended, but I'm scared. LOL.
I
um,
totally get it.
yeah.
Going
So
back to
let's yeah, so
that
let's start with the Speedy. So we have
yeah,
the coated canvas, the Damier Ben, and that has the treated brown leather. How would you care for that? I actually have that same exact bag and I do nothing to it.
I do I do too, and same, I do nothing to it.
Okay.
Um, the wonderful thing about Damier Bean is it is that treated leather, so it is
Mhm.
worry-free in the sense of you don't need to worry about water stains, cleaning, or anything. I think wiping it down every now and then with a damp rag is more than
Mhm.
adequate, especially too because, Louis Vuitton actually changed their formula for their Damier Bean leather in 2020, I believe, 2020 or 2021. But that
Okay.
old style, that matte, the shiny, not the matte, because the matte is the new stuff. That
The
shiny,
canvas or the leather? You
the
mean the
leather.
leather? You're talking about the leather trim,
Yes,
the
the
brown
leather
leather trim.
trim, so, like,
Okay.
on the Speedy, those handles,
Yep.
the older bags, the more you wipe it down, the more susceptible it is to peeling, cracking, and stuff like
Mhm.
that, and that's another reason why LV changed their formula to the matte finish is because it is more hard wearing for, like, especially on the Neverfull with those straps, it doesn't dig in as
Yeah.
much and isn't as susceptible to cracking. But I think with Damier Bean and treated leathers, you don't canvas is beautiful in the sense of
Yes.
you don't really need to do any maintenance to it. I would say just
Mhm.
regularly wipe it down with a damp cloth to get any of dirt, grime off of it. But I think it's good. The
Yeah.
only question for the Celine bag is I also have a Celine Boston bag, which is beautiful. Mine is all leather. So I will condition it from time to time. But if it's a canvas one, I think it should be fine in the same of I don't think you have to do too much to it. Trying to think, I'm not too familiar with Celine. I think they have the untreated canvas, the
Mhm.
coated canvas, and leather. I know the coated canvas ones tend to be the most popular Celine Boston bags.
Yeah.
But if it's a coated canvas, you can just wipe it down. Um, yeah,
So I know you have
yeah.
one too.
Yes, I do. That is, one of my favorite bags. It's so pretty. But yeah, I think you have some really beautiful bags that tend to be, really everyday bags. I don't think you have to do too much to them, which is
Yeah.
good
Yes.
because handbag care can be time consuming.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and I would add the only additional I don't know why I keep picking up my Neverfull. The only thing I would add, because I do have the Damier Ben Speedy 30, that is my bad weather bag. So if I know that I'm going out, if there's a chance of rain or bad weather, I like to bring that bag with me because I know that the rain won't hurt it.
Mhm.
So the only additional thing I do, because I tend to wear that bag when it is bad weather, is I'll just wipe it down with a dry cloth when I get inside. So if I do have any water on my bags, and actually same with the epi leather as well, I tend to use these when it's bad weather. If they get any dampness on them, once I get inside, I make sure I always wipe it down, dry it right away with a dry cloth.
I think that is a very, very good point. I do the same too. Just because it's protecting it, wiping the water off the hardware prevents it from like oxidizing, tarnishing, as well
Yep,
as it just like adding that extra peace of mind of prolonging the life. The more you take care of it, the longer it's going to last, the better it's going to look over time. So I think that's a really good point you bring up is when you do take a bag out that even though it's made for the elements, you still want to protect it and take care of it.
exactly, exactly. So I have a little bit of a fun question for you now, and it's actually we've been on here for an hour and 45 minutes.
Wow, it's
So
been
it's been a while, so I don't know what your time limit is, but I think we'll see if any other questions come in the chat. I just had one more um, pre-filming question that I had for you. And then other than that, we'll see what else comes in the chats. And I think maybe we can wrap it up soon.
yeah,
But this was so much fun. I have
it
such a
was,
blast
yeah,
talking with you. Dee said, "Great tips. Thank you both. You're so welcome, Dee. And
yes, thank
you
you.
have wonderful bags that are so easy to take care of." Um, so one question that I thought would be really fun to talk about is your work, and you actually kind of already mentioned one when you ruined your bag with the magic eraser. But what's the worst thing that you've ever done to your bag or has happened to your bag? And is there any mishap that you have not been able to repair
That I
or
haven't
fix
been
or
able to
clean your way
prepare.
out of?
Oh, that is a good one.
Fortunately, the only one I have is when I spilled coffee on this. I've been
Yeah,
pretty lucky.
I tend to be I'm more OCD in nature. So I tend to be very cautious and mindful of things. Trying to think. I think the worst damage I've ever had to a bag is on my Neverfull. Actually, I wasn't paying attention, and I happened to like bump up against the wall, and it just like gouged the
Oh,
side of it and got a big scratch. Same with I think this Horizon is like it has so
oh,
many like canvas scrapes and stuff like that, which is sad, but it's also like part of traveling.
yeah.
Um,
Although I will say, just looking at it on screen, I can't see anything. It looks great.
Yeah, no, I try to take as good care of it as possible, like wiping the leather off and stuff like
Yeah,
that. It's really you can't really tell until you're like really looking at it. Um, gosh, I've had so
yeah.
many things.
I know. I've
Sorry.
had some close calls when it's so funny. It
Yeah.
reminded me when you said about getting a gash on your Neverfull. I was actually, and this goes back to Dee's question about the damier Band Speedy. I was actually wearing that bag, and when I go out into my garage, leaving the house, there's two steps down, and I don't know what I did, but I just like missed the steps and like fell on the garage floor. And my first thought was not if I was okay, but like, oh my God, where's my bag? Is my bag okay? Did I scrape it? And it came out perfect. I mean, talk about a hard wearing bag. This bag like fell
Yeah,
down on concrete and it was fine. But yeah,
yeah.
that was my first thought.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
Not like
It's
did
the
I break my
handbag.
ankle, but is my bag okay?
Yeah, it's the luxury lover in us because I've done the exact same thing. I think thinking about it more now is I'm trying to think what bag it was. I don't like vaguely remember. I spilled my Longchamp work toe. I use and abuse that
Oh,
bag. Is I dumb me I drank all my coffee out of my coffee cup. Didn't think anything of it. I was like, "Oh, I finished it. It's fine. I'll just throw it in my bag."
yeah.
Well, like the little driblets somehow seeped their way out. It tipped over and spilled in, and I wasn't able to get that stain out because it seeped through the organizer down below, and I didn't know that it spilled
Oh,
in the first place.
no.
So the stain just sat there, and then a few months later, I for some reason I pulled the organizer out, and I saw that it dripped like
So you
coffee
didn't
had.
even see it,
Didn't even
yeah.
see it. So that's another thing too, is like be mindful too of anything can happen, life happens, but it's also like part of it. If I would have caught it sooner, I probably could have removed it, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
But
And that's actually a good point about organizers. I know some people love
yeah,
them or hate them. I like organizers. I use organizers, especially in a bag that, like I have one in my Neo No. I hear that's like it's not super light color, but it is a little bit more on the lighter side.
yeah,
I always recommend to people, get a bag organizer. It'll help keep your bag clean. It'll organize your things. But that is a good point to make sure you take it out, and especially for me, like I don't always take it out. Like this one in my Neo No, I store my things in here. And then when I switch out of this bag, I take my things out. I keep the organizer in there.
that's how I am
So
too.
that's a great point
Yeah,
to take it out and check.
yeah, to take it out and check every now and then. But also that's it's good that you have one in that bag because those Alcantara suede-like linings are so hard to clean because if you use water on them, it destroys that like plush nap to it. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, so that's also the thing too is like organizers are great because they keep your whole life organized and set, but it also
Uh-huh.
can really prevent dropping your keys in your bag that can like scuff the like wear inside,
Hmm.
or like what if a pen slips out of it something and like
Yeah.
goes through. I would rather replace maybe a $50 organizer at the max. I tend to shop on Amazon and get mine for like $10,
Yeah.
but but for me it's like I would rather just worst comes to worst throw out a $20 organizer than have to go through that painstaking of fully deep cleaning the interior of my bag because something spilled by accident. But yeah, it's also up to
Exactly.
personal preference. I know everyone's like, some people like the saggy look, some people don't like the structured look of the organizer. So
Yeah.
either way, potato, potato.
I know. I know one complaint I have heard, which reminds me of you not wanting to use the purse pillow in the Chanel 19, is that sometimes they can stretch out the bag a little bit.
Yeah,
Or if it's a really structured organizer, if the leather is soft, like you can see the line. Like if the
yeah.
organizer goes across here, you can see that line in it. I like to go for this, like this is from Zumoni, but they have the thinner. Oops. Oh, the pochette is in here. I was like, why can't I get this out? The thinner 1 millimeter fabric.
That's the ones I
And
tend to do. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I like these. So it'll catch any dirt and debris. You can actually I don't know if it's not really showing up on camera, but there's a little bit of dirt and debris in there. It'll catch that and it'll keep things organized. But that is a good point with liquids, especially with
yeah,
these thinner ones. The liquids can definitely go through, and you
yeah.
want to take it out and check under there.
Do you store your handbags with the organizers in them? I know some people don't like to do that. Some people do. I personally
It
do.
depends.
If my bag has one, I kind of just leave it in because I'm too lazy to take
Yeah.
it out. But but that you do bring up a good point because I've noticed that on my bigger speedies where that like the canvas sags,
Yeah.
um, at that top of that like organizer, it can like smush in and create like a crease line at that top there. And
Yeah.
especially if you're not using your bag frequently, it can create that line and then it's just super noticeable. But
Yeah. For me, it depends. Something like this, where it's really thin, I do store this in the bag. I also have a Speedy in my organizer in my Speedy 30 that I keep stored in the bag because that one's not a tight fit. There's a little bit of room. It's for the Speedy 30, but I don't know if I just got one that they made small or if their measurements were off.
yeah.
But I like it because it's an organizer, but I still get a little bit of that Speedy sag with it.
Hmm.
So that I will store. Other ones, like in my Speedy 25, I take the organizer out because that fits much tighter. And that's the Empreinte leather. I don't want it to wear or stretch out the leather. So it depends. That one I do. I
Okay.
do also have organizers that I use in multiple bags.
Yeah,
So if one's in storage, I'm using the organizer in another bag.
yeah.
So for me, it depends. It depends on how
Yeah.
tight the fit is. If it's really tight, I would not store it with the organizer in it.
Okay. I would say I'm more pretty similar to that too, yeah. I used to have this craze where I was like, every bag needs an organizer. And then when you start adding up the change, you're like, oh my gosh, I
I
spent so much
know.
money on organizers. That then too, it's just kind of like just pull them out, use them for different bags. Because that's what's nice about them is a lot of
Exactly.
them you can use in different bags. Like the Neverfull GM I use in my, like, Cabas Alto tote, which I'm
Uh-huh.
so okay, I just also want to mention, side note, I'm so excited they're bringing the Cabas line back because I've been saying it for
Yes.
years. When I saw you post that, I was like my jaw dropped.
I
I was like,
know.
"Finally, the moment."
Yes. So if anyone didn't see it, if you missed it, Louis Vuitton had their women's wear fall winter show like 2 weeks ago, I think. I did a YouTube video on it. You can check it out. Um, and in the show, they brought back so many monogram canvas bags, which I always love to watch the shows, and I love to always look at the reviews of the shows because I don't watch every runway show.
Mhm.
But it's so great, especially for Louis Vuitton, because they always bring back old designs. See what they have in the runway show. If you want it, go out and get it pre-loved before the prices go up. Like it gives you, because from the
100%.
show to when the collection gets released in stores is typically 6 months. So the fall show was in March. We're going to get that collection in September. That gives you a 6 months heads up on what's going to be popular that season. So the Cabas, they're bringing back the piano and the mezzo.
Okay, not the Alto?
I cannot say with confidence that they're bringing back the alto. I did see some preliminary information for the piano and the mezzo. Those were
Okay.
priced at, I believe, €2,000 for the piano, which is smaller, and the mezzo I think was around €2,100. And those are obviously not confirmed prices because 6 months from now they
Yeah.
can change it. But that's kind of the baseline where I would expect those two bags to be. So around €2,000 would be what? Maybe like 22, 2,300
Yeah.
US dollars. Yeah, 2,300 US dollars. So around there. And I think that's such a great alternative to the Neverfull because it
Yeah.
has that zip closure. It comes in, different sizes like the Neverfull does, but you don't see it quite as often. I think it's not quite as saturated as the Neverfull is.
Yeah. I think what would be super cool is if they kind of made adjustment to the sizes where I could see LV doing maybe like the mezzo slightly bigger
Hmm.
where it's kind of that nice in between the alto and the mezzo. And same with the piano. I think they might zoom it up a little bit where it's a little bit bigger, but you never know. Um,
Yeah.
but you bring up a really, really good point. I tell people this all the time. It's like anytime there's rumors that a brand is going to bring a bag back, the price will go crazy on the pre-love market. I remember
Yes.
Epi. What was it? You used like a year ago. You used to be able to get Epi for dirt cheap, like
Hmm.
$200-300 for a good condition bag, and you can find like the really really poor condition ones for like $50, like depending on
Yeah.
how bad they are. But now you can't get them for under 4, 5, $600
Hmm.
um, because of their re-releasing all that. Same with the vernis. I've seen vernis for Louis Vuitton has gone
Yes.
crazy in prices. Uh,
Vernis is back. More, we're
uh-huh.
going to get more Vernis this year.
Which I'm excited. I'm in my Bernie era right now, if I'm being
Yes.
honest. I just got a few pieces and I'm like, "Ooh, I like this."
Yeah. So actually, I know I said we would wrap it up soon, but speaking of vernis, you made me realize we forgot one of the key leathers. We talked about the canvases, the leathers, we touched on fabrics and denim, but we did not talk about patent leather. And that's actually one thing I do personally shy away from. I don't have any patent leather bags. I do have some small leather goods. But I know that especially for some older models, there have been issues with the coating on the
Yeah.
vernis getting sticky over time. The lighter colors can tend to yellow. Do
Hmm.
you have any advice on what to look for vernis leather? Or if you're looking at some that might have a poor condition, is there any way to get rid of that stickiness or other issues with the vernis leather?
Yes, so that brings up a really good point. So to first understand how to care for patent leather, you have to understand what it is. So what
Mm-hmm.
patent leather is it's a smooth calf leather that's
Mm-hmm.
been, in case of Louis Vuitton, it's been embossed with the logo, and then it's actually a polyurethane coating on top of it. So like
Mm-hmm.
a plastic like coating, and that's what gives it its shine and like luster look to it.
Mm-hmm.
So really what's sad about patent leather is you are so right in the sense that lighter colors will eventually yellow
Mm-hmm.
because that plastic coating, as it deteriorates over time, it gets that
Yeah.
yellow filmy texture. So the thing I always recommend is if you do buy a lighter um, colored patent leather bag, is
Mhm.
always, this is a one exception to my rule, is store it in a dark place because
Okay.
UV, the sunlight, is what causes the patent leather coating to actually deteriorate and cause it to turn different
Okay.
colors. So I would recommend storing it in a darker place inside of a dust bag. That will prolong the color and prevent it from discoloring. And also, too, for storage, is patent leather is very susceptible to color transfer, whether it be from
Mhm.
wearing it on dark colors or a lot of times people don't know is you can set something very close to it, and if it's rubbing up against a dark color, it will actually suck the dye out from the material. So I've seen bags where um, people used to store with, I don't recommend, do not store
Yeah.
bags with newspaper because of the moisture.
Oh.
The biggest killer for patent leather is moisture. That's what causes
Mhm.
the it to get sticky and deteriorate and all that. So people used to think that like, oh, I can store my bag with newspaper inside. Well, it actually sucks out the ink from the newspaper, and then I've seen light color bags where the newspaper
And you
showed
can
up in the
see.
leather, and
Oh.
you see the newspaper, the letters backwards in it. But because it's staining the leather on the interior, no matter how much you scrub
You
it,
can't.
you can't remove it. So that's like the one flaw to patent leather is it's really sad because once you get color transfer and stuff like that, the only way to get rid of it is to strip the coating off of it and re-dye the whole bag.
Yeah.
So I've seen like a lot of like leather spas and stuff will do that. So you can
Mm.
always make it darker, but you can never restore a light color.
Yeah.
So newbies to patent leather, I would recommend getting dark colors
Mhm.
because deep, like I think amaranth, which is that pretty like
Yes,
blackish
that's
purple,
gorgeous.
reds tend to be easier to maintain and are less likely
Mhm.
to get that color transfer. Um, but yeah, Vernie in the sense is very picky, but it's also easy to care for at the same time. So like the
Yeah.
only maintenance I would recommend is like wiping it down every now and then with
Mhm.
a damp towel and then drying it right away, and it's perfectly fine. I know I
Yeah.
recently did a reel on how to shine patent leather. That product I used is actually that conditions that coating to kind
Yeah.
of bring that luster back. So that will help if your bag gets that sticky coating, that will actually remove it. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, if your patent leather starts to get sticky, it's you can't really fix it unless if you take off the
Yeah.
whole glazing and redo it. So a lot of these care products are just really temporary fixes.
Yeah.
And another thing too is I know people like if you get corner wear scuffs like that, you can use rubbing alcohol to remove that. But also you have to be very careful because if you use it in excess, it can actually destroy the coating, and that's how you
Yeah.
get like the peeling, flaking, and all that stuff. But yes, vernis is so beautiful,
It
and if you
is.
care for it properly and are super careful, they can last for years and years and years. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know, definitely, and that's what I don't have any, but I've always heard
Hmm.
dark colors, which is actually really funny. The one vernis leather piece I do have is their rose gold
Uh-huh.
vernis, the mini pochette accessoire. I missed that a few years ago. It came out not too long ago,
Mhm.
but I didn't get one, and that was the one piece I always regretted not getting. I just love
Mhm.
that rose gold color. So I ended up buying it pre-loved last year, I think, and that's the one piece I have.
Aw, I love that collection. It was so fun. I think
It
didn't they do
was.
it was the amaranth, the
Yep,
rose gold, and then I did, like, the blue and the yellow pattern. It was so pretty,
so
but,
pretty.
yeah, I'm excited that, LV is re-releasing all this stuff, but, oh my gosh, the prices are insane.
I know, I
But
know.
But that's also another point is if you like it, run to the pre-love market now and grab those before they're crazy insane because I know Fashion File and like Rebag and stuff like that, I've kind of been watching their prices and oh my gosh, they've gotten kind of insane with their
Yeah.
prices. But
Yeah.
yeah.
And so I keep saying we're gonna wrap up. So I think we are gonna wrap up since
Yes.
we've been going on 2 hours. But um last final note, talking about going to the pre-loved market. I always love to, look at the runway shows, see what's gonna be coming out, see what new pieces are re-releasing. I always love to look at that in the shows. Go to the pre-loved market before the prices go up, but also vice versa. If I'm buying something new, I always like to go to the pre-loved market and look at the resale and see the condition of pieces that I'm thinking of getting.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a piece that's been around for a few seasons and people are reselling it. Look for all the wear and see if there's any things that tend to pop up on those
Yeah.
piece. And that'll also sort of guide my buying decisions if I want something or not. Like if it's a canvas bag, okay, all of these bags on the pre-love market all have corner wear. Um,
Mhm.
or for example, one bag that I always wanted was it was from Cruise 2019, Chanel. It's called Sunset by the Sea flap bag. And it's just, I mean, like any other Chanel. It's like a quilted flat bag, but it's like a really beautiful matte caviar leather. And it has this beautiful chunky chain top handle. But I noticed a lot of them on the pre-loved market, the metal coating on the chain top handle has always rubbed off. So it's
Mhm.
almost made me rethink my purchase. Like, okay, now I'm noticing a lot of these have the same wear in the same place with the
Yeah.
chain. Is that something I can handle? If I buy one that doesn't have that, chances are if I'm using it, eventually that wear will start to show up. Is that something I can live with if it happens, or is it something that I can fix when it does happen? What will
Mhm.
that cost be? So that's also really something important to do when you are looking at the condition. See if you notice any trends and how will you tackle that if and when it happens to the item you buy.
That's very,
And
very
are you
true.
prepared
Yeah.
for that?
Yeah, and also to another thing to note too is because Louis Vuitton is awesome in the sense that they offer a full service repair spa in the
Hmm.
sense that as long as the bag is in repairable condition, they can custom make any part that needs to be replaced,
Yeah.
um, which is amazing. And it's so cool that like what their artisans can do. But then there's other brands like Chanel recently they only are starting to repair, I wanna say, like, black and dark colored bags. They're no longer, like, offering spa services for, like, lighter color bags because the
Yeah.
SA I spoke to when I had the jumbo fix for that pop stitch, she was
Hmm.
saying that, like, "Yeah, we don't offer any services for, like, tans or, like, colors because it's so hard to, like, restore the dye back to the way it originally was, which I think is such a shame because that brings up the point
Yeah.
of like the quality is not the same. So if you are making the policy where you won't repair your own bags, you need to make the quality where it will last and people can get their money's worth out of it, you know? So
Yep.
that's another thing too is be aware of which brands offer aftercare services and what are their stipulations. Like I know Balenciaga, you have to have proof of purchase, which is exclusively through a boutique, their online, or an authorized retailer, which is like 3 stores, like Saks,
Yeah.
meaning and stuff like that. Um, and then Gucci also too. I know they're starting to get more sustainable and they're trying to launch their aftercare service, but it's also very limited. So I
Yeah.
think that's also mindful too, is now that sustainability and pre-love is coming back, to really do your research and see what brands are willing to offer. And also, like you said, the cost of stuff, because
Yep.
repair prices are skyrocketing. Like I think
Mhm.
back to the Neverfull thing, when I had mine fully replaced, it was 660. And I think now it's like nine something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so that's another thing to be aware too is the
Yep.
cost of things. But yeah.
Yep. Good. Well, thank you so much. We had Maria come back in the chat. You're both awesome. Great information, Jacob. You have the best handbag care tips. You
Um, Thank you,
do.
Priya. That's so
And
sweet.
that was why I am and was so thrilled to have you on as my first guest, because I do always recommend you whenever anyone comes with to me with a question about pre-loved bags or handbag care. I offer the best advice I can, but I always say, go to Jacob. Here's his Instagram handle. Check out, like, you have so much information ready to go, all your reels and your posts. So I will link to that. And in your story highlights on Instagram, you have all of your recommended products. I believe you also
Mhm.
have an Amazon store, right? Is that up to date? You have your products there?
For the most part, yes. So
Okay.
that guide is actually linked to that. So you click on the link in the story and it will take you directly there. So even if it's not mentioned in the
Perfect.
guide, I do have additional products too that are similar because another thing too is I have a large fan base in Europe and a lot of these products I'm using they don't have. So
Okay.
luckily through other wonderful creators, they were able to recommend products to me that are like the same that they've used and had
Okay.
good experiences with. And I also too like I love hearing from people and I love helping people clean their things. You know, if I
Yep.
ever don't know something, I'm crazy in the sense that I will scour the internet and find the information for you. I've had that happen. I actually just responded to someone. She asked me like a month ago, like, "Hey, how do I clean this?" And I was like, "I don't know, but I will find." And I just responded to her last week, and I was like, "Hey, remember me?" Here's some information I found through my research. But yeah, I love talking and helping
That's
other
awesome.
luxury lovers because you know it is wonderful to connect to other people that are interested in the same thing as you. But yeah,
Yeah. Good. So
yeah.
I will link to all of that. I don't have everything linked right now in the live stream, but as soon as the live stream's over, I will go into the video description and add links to everything. So you can find Jacob over on Instagram at Je veux le sac.
Okay.
I will have it linked. Go check him out there. Thank you so much. I am
Yeah.
honored and thrilled to have you on for my first live stream guest.
Thank you
It
for
was
having
really a
me. It was
pleasure. I
fun.
feel bad. Our conversation was a little all over the place. Once we got started talking, we just went from there. So I'll timestamp everything.
Okay.
And thank you so much for being here. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. And for anyone still watching on replay, if you missed the live stream, you can still go down into the video comments and leave some comments. I will definitely be checking the comments and forward anything to Jacob or answer stuff myself. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Yes. Thanks, guys. And thank
All
you for
right.
having me.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thanks for
Bye.
watching.